Welcome, birds and turds, to the Angry Bird Pod Show. I'm your host, Kyle. I'm here with my buddy Matt, and today we have a special guest, a fella named Richard Birchett. I've already forgotten how to pronounce it, but we'll
Birchett.
Birchett?
Matt's got it. Birchett.
Matt, yeah. To be honest, I realized before we started recording that I hadn't actually consumed any of your content, Richard, so I apologize if I sound ridiculous. But I will promise you that I will after this.
I've consumed all of it myself.
Oh, perfect. So we average out to...
And I'm still coming on.
That's how I found Richard. I just was going through YouTube and searched a specific search, and he came up, and I've been watching his videos ever since.
Actually, I think you did send me, a video or clips. Yeah. I lied.
Yeah.
I have seen a couple clips.
Yeah.
I believe they were long-eared owls.
Mm. Yes.
That
was the first one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Are you currently in Canada or are you in the UK?
Yeah, so I'm in Ottawa at the moment. Living here in Canada for, originally 4 years. I was in Toronto for a year and now Ottawa. I got here last July.
Oh, cool. Seeing as it's the nation's capital, I have been there, but I've only been there once. And I was there with my family, and we went to, I can't remember what it was called, but it was some all-you-can-eat buffet, and I was, I think, 17. So I was like prime all-you-can-eat, like age. And then I thought we were going from the restaurant back to the hotel. So I was like packed to the rafters. And then my parents were like, let's walk to the Parliament buildings and watch the light show. And I was like, okay. And I've never been more uncomfortable laying on grass in my life. Like for the next hour, we watched this crazy light show they did. And I just felt like I sat on a big rock. Like the middle of me was just packed. It was gross, but it was fun. That's my Ottawa story.
Yeah, this is a lot better than Toronto for me, but
Yeah, that's easy to surpass for sure.
Yeah.
Much as I like Toronto and I end up in Toronto a lot, when I'm there, I usually hate it.
Yeah.
After when I think about it, I'm like, oh, that was fun. I had a good day. But then when I'm there, I'm like, traffic everywhere and people are doing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, one of the things we got to do is open our Twisted Tea. It's kind of just the tradition that we do. We open it at the same time. If you don't have anything to open, it's all good. Yeah.
Oh, he's got it open already.
What do you got in there?
That's a Mill Street.
Yeah. Organic?
It's nice. Yeah, I like the beer. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Found one at last.
You found what? You had to go searching for it?
Well, when I was in Toronto, I was drinking Steam Whistle, and then I got here and I was drinking Lug Tread, and that was all right. But then I found this one, and that's kind of like nice.
So why not the hard iced teas?
Well, yeah. you want me to go into that now?
Yeah, just a quick little one before we get into the topic.
It's not really an amazing story. It's just I was on a winter survival course because I used to be a survival specialist in the military, and I was going through my Arctic sort of training, and we were going on the run basically for 10 days, and the conditions were pretty bad. It was like minus 27. I had a person I was on the run with, and another group or two got one of them got injured by running through a pine forest and got a branch stuck in the side of their head. So they kind of got partnered on their own. So we had to take this girl with us. She was a girl, and sadly she was a bit run down and fatigued. And we ended up getting caught by the Hunter Force German army. Part of the exercise, got bundled into the back of a wagon and got taken off to interrogation. And at the time, because it was so cold, my backpack and all my water had frozen solid, and I was thirsty as hell. And we got bundled into the back of a van, and there was this in the corner at the back was a big tank, and we were starving and thirsty. And I opened it up, and it was full of iced tea with loads of ice in there. And I hate the stuff, and I was like, but I drank it and didn't like it, and that's the last time I ever drank iced tea. There we go.
Fair.
All right. Hey,
hopefully it wasn't too long, but yeah. So ever since then, I was like, but I was so thirsty, I drank it, and it did the job. But because it was already freezing, iced tea wasn't the best. So yeah.
Wow.
I
All right,
didn't
we'll
know
let
where
it
that
slide.
story was
We'll
going.
let it slide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It might hurt our chances to actually get a Twisted Tea sponsorship, but it's okay. It's
Thing
worth
is,
it.
I've never
Totally
tasted
worth
it, so I can't knock it until I've tried it. So I will try it and let you know how I get on.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, well,
Sounds good.
we're expecting a review
Yeah.
on your channel of no, I'm just kidding.
I'll have a tin. I'll have a tin next time when I'm out.
Yeah. We actually have that'd be really funny. We actually have had them like one of our posts, which is pretty
Well,
sweet.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. See where that goes.
Nowhere probably. Yeah, so I think actually I had not much to do with this particular setup. Matt here is our social media manager, and I think he was chatting with you online, Richard, right? And you
Yeah.
guys started talking about owls and owl, or I think owls specifically, with some wrapped in the whole ethics thing
Yeah.
about photographing them. And then we thought it would be a cool idea to jump on here and chop it up a bit. So I think we're gonna throw some questions out, and we'll see where the conversation goes, and
Okay. Sure.
have a good time.
Yeah.
Sound good?
I think especially with you now, photographing in Canada and having kind of the UK kind of part of it as well, where hides and some baiting and stuff like that is more used. That you would have more of an insight on what you see here and what you see there, and kind of meet in the middle on what might be acceptable or
Yeah.
behavior while you're out there.
Yeah. It's certainly massively different in the UK than it is here, and the UK is getting progressively worse, sadly. But
Right. Right.
yeah.
What do you think are some of like the most common like ethical concerns just in owl photography while you're out there? What you see?
in sort of in Canada or in sort of
Well, we'll stick to local for now, and we'll
Okay.
say in Canada, and then maybe we'll get into the UK,
Sure.
afterwards.
Well, my first real sort of experience was when I was in Toronto, actually, and it wasn't so much baiting; it was more disturbance for flight photography for long-eared owls. Obviously, in a well-known park in Toronto. Obviously, the owls had come down from up north, quite fatigued, probably underweight, knackered. Trying to rest up and roost in the copse of trees. There was quite a few. Up to one point, there was 14 long-eareds in there. Predominantly most of the time during the day. Obviously, they were laid up, just resting. And I witnessed quite a lot of people going in, literally feet away, whilst their friend would be outside waiting on a clearance, hoping to shake the tree to get the owl to fly out to get the flight shots. So for me, that was probably my first experience of sort of ethical grounds there regarding, people trying to flush the birds to get them to fly without understanding where they've come from and what condition they're in. So kind of having to witness that on a daily basis there was bad. And actually the park authority there decided they had to put some fences up around the trees to stop people going in. Although people could just go underneath the fence, it was a case of just a deterrent there. Having chatted to the rangers, it's quite a problem there. Felt a bit saddened for it, really, because it was bad to see it, and such concentration of a small area. It was the same thing with chasing after short-eared owls and northern harriers, running up and down hillsides, chasing them with cameras, and it was just like blimey. So for me, that was quite hard work because where I'm from back in the UK, I spend a lot of time on my own, and I don't see a lot of people. And this sort of behaviour I don't really witness daily, and I found that quite difficult to stand by and watch it really without having to intervene. And I did intervene a couple of times, just with hopefully a fairly diplomatic approach. How
was that received?
Well, I was always a bit concerned because I don't live in Canada. I'm only here as a temporary resident, so
Sure.
I mean, I was expecting some verbal sort of on your bike, Brit, what have you got? You got nothing, no right to say anything to us, sort of thing. And I didn't get any of that, to be honest. I kind of said it in a way that tried to explain the situation. I think education is kind of needed rather than going into the jugular, really, because I mean, as much as you feel quite passionate about it, it's kind of most people understand that what they're doing is wrong, but the others don't. So I did, and I get the old, well, those other people did it, and there was more people in there this morning, and I only pushed them sort of 20 foot, and it's like, well, really? And it was just really bad to see, and and they knew they were doing wrong because they saw me looking, and then they moved back out again a couple of times, a few other people. So it was just one of those that people just trying their luck. I think just to get the shots, to get it on socials, to get the likes, etc. I just felt a bit saddened because the passion for me is the the wildlife itself, regardless of a shot. So yeah, I kind of found that difficult. That was my first real taster of ethically sort of bad practices, in regard to flushing the birds, really.
And that's kind of what struck me when I had come across your video, because I had not gone to this park myself, working 10 minutes from there for the last 17 years.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very local from where I work. And I came across your video just by searching because I kind of wanted to see if there was any videos on it. And the first one I come across is yours, and it displayed this behavior that I've heard all about so often. And it was very, very shocking to me myself.
Yeah, I mean,
Is this the park that starts with a D?
Yeah.
It does. Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, I mean,
Which don't get me wrong, it looks like a beautiful park. It looks like a great place
Yeah.
to explore. It's just things like this that I've heard that keep me away. And then this video just like,
yeah, I mean,
just made it,
a lot of people travel far and wide, I think, to get there, and they're well aware of the place. And I think the staff there have got their work cut out, and they don't really see photographers in high regard. I spoke to a few, and I was tarred with a brush. Really, I was just another photographer with a big lens, just trying to get close enough to get a shot. And you kind of like, sometimes you feel quite embarrassed and quite sad at what you do, and you feel like, God, I'm just gonna. That's what everybody's thinking when they see a photographer, and it's kind of like trying to change that school of thought, really, that we're not all the same. And I did chat to them, and I was going to do some work with them actually there before I moved, just on giving some lectures and stuff on ethical sides. And I went to a few as well on the park, because they're trying to raise awareness there about giving them space, and they do on the pages and stuff. They're doing their bit, but they're fighting against a lot of people, and a lot of people come far and wide to go there because it's easy. It's easy photography.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago was definitely a big problem there as well. I think it was mostly with shorties. People would do what you're talking about. They'd stand there all day with their tripods, and people would throw stuff at them and shake trees and stuff. And I know that they actually had to remove, I think, at least 2 or 3 owls that fell ill. There was a saw-whet also that they had to take out of there because it was funny, not funny, but it was a couple days in a row, I would see my whole feed full of this one. It looked like the same owl because it's kind of in the same spot. And then I saw a post a couple days later that was like, this owl's been taken by Toronto Rescue because it was fell ill or whatever. And I was just like, come on, guys. Like, if we all are here to like the owl, like, why do we also want to harm it, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of the logic I apply, but I guess
it's kind of like it's a short term, but it's kind of like a long term harm that you don't see while you're there. It continues when you leave as the groups progress, because when you're not there, the groups are still continuing. I don't think there's anything wrong with group photography. Don't get me wrong, but it's no excuse to just pretend like you're not adding to it, knowing that an issue is happening. Now, does your perspective on the ethical owl photography like compare between UK and Canada? Like, from what you've experienced, like say in a park like this?
I mean, I think so. That there are instances at home, because I'm quite well plugged into the scene at home around the UK. Sadly, it's got so much worse since I left, and more so with actual baiting, which I know does go on here, especially in certain parts of where I am at the moment in Ottawa. In certain areas of Ottawa, it happens a lot, even with, sadly, professional photographers that take people on workshops, and they start to habituate the owls to the feeding side. And that's happening with great greys at the moment. There's 3 in a certain area. One's quite secretive, one's not interested, and one of the owls is absolutely following photographers around. So yeah, in the UK, because it's, especially where I'm located, you don't get a mass of people. I suppose here, because Canada's very concentrated around big areas, you've got a lot of people in one area, and then you go now north and there's nothing. It's kind of, I think everybody comes to one place and it's all en masse. So it's a bit of paparazzi, wildlife paparazzi. It's kind of, in the UK you do get it but you've got more chance if you were in that sort of if you did that's the way you did things, you could get away with it more without anybody finding you, sort of thing. People do it, people push the boundaries. So shaking trees and baiting, but now it's more so not baiting wild birds whilst being out transiting around. It's more hide based, bringing wildlife in now, and sadly a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of people are bringing hides and they're baiting hides now because there's money to be made, and it's massive now. It's just getting ridiculous, really. It's almost like may as well stick a fence around the whole of the UK because it's like a zoo. It's kind of the poor wildlife hasn't got a chance at the moment, and I think it's a knock-on effect. Yeah.
I guess the draw is like you can kind of like set up the shot as well a little bit more. It's a little bit more of a guarantee type thing.
Oh, massive.
You can kind of pick a background, and you know, you can kind of like envision the shot. You know,
yeah,
before.
I mean, with remote capture and with you could leave your camera and leave it, and it'll take pictures for you. You know, it's kind of there are sides to it. You know, with if we're right to go on off on a tangent a little, I suppose, but
yeah, go ahead.
We live on tangents. It's all good.
So there's a lot to be said for hides in general, I guess, and it's not all hides. There are some hides in some organisations in the UK where it's not baited. You go to the RSPB, which is Royal Society of Protection of Birds, and National Trust Land and Wildlife Trusts. You can't bait on those places. You go there to observe hides, to see birds naturally coming in and out, and that's one way that if people are elderly, they've got disabilities, young kids, you know, it's great places for people to then watch wildlife. But it's the organisations now that are baiting foxes and owls and birds of prey and mustelid family, all sorts of stuff, and they're doing it on like a daily basis, and new hides are popping up every couple of weeks. And the YouTube scene, sadly, there's lots of YouTubers in the UK now that all latch onto these companies. The companies will then give them free access, and they'll promote through YouTube the hides, the guaranteed, the shots. I mean, the shots are absolutely incredible. Nice diffused bokeh backgrounds, nice mossy posts, dead pigeon, pheasant, whatever. Amazing photography, but for me, it's just kind of it's really. I think for me, it saddens me really that that's what people do, and it's starting off where I did when I was small, doing it the right way. I could never go and do it the way that that's done now because it's missing the whole passion piece of it. I mean, I could go on and on about it, to be fair, but it's easy photography. It's, you know, they've got things like coffee machines, log burners in there. They've got comfy seats, vibrating seats, you know, heated areas in there. It's so comfortable. It's guaranteed to get the wildlife, and they get some amazing shots. But the trouble is, it's the knock-on effect of what happens to the wildlife when they get too habituated to the food source. They start to go out of condition. If someone went to feed them for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they would, natural instinct for hunting hawks and Ancipiter species is to hunt, be in prime condition. The birds are then fed. They get habitually used to the food. They then just come in, get the food, fly off, sit, digest, and off they go. They kind of get out of condition as well, and they lose the edge a bit. And that's not what the birds told me, but that's what experts have said. You know, it's kind of, and also manually handling the food, the disease and stuff that's transferred. Where's the food come from? People go out and shoot foxes, rabbits, pheasants, pigeons to feed. They use the hides, you know. So there's family of foxes getting killed and they got young because they're putting something. It's just, I don't think a lot of people stop and think about the knock-on effects of all of that. And now they're popping up everywhere. That's having a big impact on the wildlife, really.
Yeah, because when you can like guarantee like the final product, which is kind of what this is all about, is like not the process itself, but just the end game, the final product, the photo to share. When you can guarantee that, I mean, there's quite a big group of people out there that will take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That opportunity, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like kingfish is another prime example.
Yeah,
you've probably seen it. I don't know whether they do it to belted kingfishers here. I don't know if they get habituated to being fed, but certainly in the UK,
they hate people.
They're the nemesis bird for nearly everyone.
Absolutely. All you can hear is that rattle go off, and then, you know, they've gone
all the time.
Direction.
I live across from a park all summer. I just hear it, and I've never once been able to get a shot. And it's like literally hundreds of feet away from me.
Yeah.
It literally takes like days hours upon hours of dedication if you want a shot like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get lucky, but to do it regularly, like it actually is, it's a skill.
Yeah, and in the UK at the moment they've got, I mean, kingfisher hides, because it's one of the major buzzbirds in the UK,
Sure.
because it's such a beautiful little thing, and
Of course.
they have set up purposely in front of the hide. They've got a pool of water with a perch, and below the pool of water is a tank. The tank comes up to near the water's surface, and they have a bit of pipe inside the hide. They have a tank of fish. The kingfisher arrives, the fish are put down through the pipe, they go down the pipe underneath into the tank. Fish haven't got a chance to escape. The kingfisher sits there, the food's there, it dives. They have a camera pre set up with all the right shutter speeds, remote release, whatever. As soon as the kingfisher dives, remote shutter or whatever, and then they capture the magical shot. So to me,
You've said a couple things.
it's just
Yeah.
I've never heard it explained like that.
yeah.
Yeah. Like you've said a couple of things recently that I didn't, not that I've never thought about, but like I've seen those kingfisher shots and like you can clearly tell they're set up in some way, but like the whole rig behind it, I didn't know.
No,
But I was like, I
never
knew
heard
this
of it.
had to be something.
Yeah, it's sad.
And then earlier, yeah. And earlier you'd mentioned the hawks and stuff just being like, I'm gonna sit in this tree, come get the food, and like hop back in the tree. And I was like, I know that like bait that is a problem for baiting, but I never thought about it for some reason in the way that you described it, where they're just like being me basically, where I go to work and then come home and sit on my ass and then I go back to work and then go sit. So like I need to get out and get more exercise.
And you're
'cause
not
I'm
conditioned.
I'm not conditioned, right? So I'm like, it's the same. Like it's them eating a bag of chips while watching TV. They're just like waiting
Right.
for. And I was like, wow, that's just kind of an interesting way of thinking.
Yeah,
about
I mean,
this
there's-
stuff.
But
Like,
somebody's not following you around trying to take your photo and get
I mean, it's bad enough,
all
isn't
the
it?
time.
get an ambassadorship or something out of it.
I mean, it causes lots of conflict between birds of prey species for the food source, and that usually they don't
Yeah.
really come into contact with each other that often. But when you're around a baited site and there's a high demand, especially during the breeding season, the birds then fight, and then it can cause injury, and that can have a knock-on effect then to the young. And I don't think it's just that, and it is that knock-on effect that further down the line with disease, with stuff being handled by humans, it's like the birds do fall out, they do get out of condition, they do get injured, and then people don't know that. People aren't interested in that. They want to go there, shoot, get some good shots, put them on there. And I don't know if people, I think that's the thing of trying to educate people. If they knew that, would they still do it? Not sure. Probably some wouldn't. Some would, but the kingfisher thing is hugely a problem at the moment. There was, and I can't mention any names, but there was a particular individual who's a photographer in the UK that took a young lad. I think he was like a young teenager. Got a camera, took him out to see kingfisher for the first time, and he took it to the boy to the baited hide, and that was his first experience of seeing kingfishers and photographing them. So the shots he probably achieved were probably the best shots he's ever going to get, and he would never probably achieve that in the wild for 5-10 years. Whatever, but the fact that now he knows that that's the easy way to get it, he ain't going to go back and learn fieldcraft and learn and do his study about the subject, preferred post, times of day, all these sorts of ethical considerations, and they just want to go to A, get to A to C without B. It's kind of like, well, where's the fun in that though? I mean, for me, passion is learning about the subject, do you get the shot? I mean, I've sat in hides for days, weeks, and I've had nothing, but you've seen other things, and it's just the thrill of, what if, do you get the shot? And you work for it. And I think a lot of that, if people don't see the hard bit at the start and they go straight to the easy bit, they ain't going to go back generally.
Right.
So, that's just, it's only, all of this is really only down to my own personal preferences, but for me, it's just a bit of a shame that they're missing the key fun element of the photography is the excitement of, you don't get it all the time. You very rarely get a great shot. And when you do, it makes it all much more worthwhile that you do nail it the right way and on your own terms without baiting. So, yeah.
Yep. Like me and Matt have talked about that kind of a bunch, where like I came from being just a birder first. Like I grew up, my grandpa was kind of like into outside in nature and stuff, and we'd go camping and he'd point out birds and we'd talk about stuff. And so like I come from observing the birds first, and through other paths I ended up with a camera in my hand, and I was like, oh, I can take a picture of this bird now. And so like I'll catch myself forgetting to take pictures sometimes. Recently, we were at a different park in Toronto, and we were kind of going after this barred owl, and we did find it, and we unfortunately did flush it, and then it pieced out because it was four of us crunching through leaves and just causing ruckus. So it was probably not the.
It happens. So
It wasn't the most.
yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. But like it flew at me, and it was the only time in my life that I've had that view of an owl before. I sat there like this. I was like, wow. Like I just like watched it whiz
just in
past.
awe. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, then I remember, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a birder first and then a photographer. Like I still think
And,
that the
I'm
experience
the
of
same.
seeing them
I
is
was
cool.
always a birder naturalist first and then photographer second. And I think if you've got that at the start, you certainly then, I think you generally have a different outlook on it, really. I mean, sometimes, many times, that you're looking through the viewfinder, if it's optical or EVF, you're kind of looking through, and sometimes it's all consuming when you're looking through the camera, the camera, looking at the subject, and when the subject, and you've captured it, and you haven't even looked at it properly with your own eyes, and the subject's gone, it's almost like you didn't live the moment. So sometimes it's nice to take yourself away from the camera, enjoy it with your own eyes, and then maybe get once you've got a few shots in the bag, but it's not always about capturing that shot. It's more about the experience of it and the memory behind it. It's always a very easy when you start off in photography, and I was never always perfect for sure. We've all made mistakes in our time, and but it's always
I
you're
still
very
do all the
eager to
time.
get the shots. Yeah, and it's always every day's a school day. I think you're always learning.
So do you think that social media has influenced the ethical concerns in owl photography based off of what you just said there, as in like rather put the camera down and just enjoy the experience, because you can't share that experience.
No, you can't. And I think
You can have that experience,
yeah,
but
I think that's one of the
that's
things
your own.
with like YouTube. At least you visually you can. I mean, sometimes I've just come back from Costa Rica and guiding a tour over there or leading a tour there, and a lot of times I got more excited than the clients. It's because it's like if I do get a bit excited, do excuse me, because it is my thing, and it's kind of, you can't impart that through social media posts necessarily unless you do like some sort of reel or something. But at least on YouTube, you can people can see, and I really need to concentrate on probably putting across what we're talking about now visually and stuff on YouTube, because I think and a lot of people who were baiting don't bait through even watching my videos, and a few people that used to hunt and shoot animals that no longer do so, and they've sent me messages saying they've put down a gun and picked up a camera. And there's not a lot, but two people said that to me, and they're two Americans actually. And
awesome.
I was like, wow, that's just like the best thing ever, that someone's now watched your videos, and other photographers, not just me, and then decided, right, because it's the same principle, except you have a shutter instead of a trigger. It's kind of
Right.
and it's the same process of fieldcraft stalking, get to know
It
subject,
really is.
everything, and it's
Yeah,
and kind of like you
100%.
can walk away as you found them.
Mhm.
And I think when hunters feel that, I think it's a sense of hunting really, but without the desire to kill something. It's
Sure.
yeah,
I got kind of an
It's kind of like
interest-
it's kind of like catch and release fishing
yeah,
to a degree.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Anyway, go ahead, Kyle.
I got an
Yeah.
interesting tangent to kind of shoehorn in here, if I may. So often, like I've mentioned the park across from me, I'll take the dog for a walk after work. Not now because it's dark as balls, but in the summertime, I'll have my camera on my back and I'll just take a picture of, there's occasionally something kind of fun in there. And I've met this guy who lives near me who has a dog as well, and our dogs became best friends. But he's a hunter, but he's also a photographer, so he'll have both gear with him. And he was telling me he's like a big naturalist guy, so he actually had some duck nest boxes installed in this park and like a few others in town, and he's just like a really, really good guy. And he was saying that he runs this like he's a part of some hunt club, and they were talking about going to hunt geese. And this guy, they had a meeting, and this guy showed up that none of them had seen before, and they were talking about going hunting, and it was a bit of a concern with bird flu, and they were talking about like the amount of geese they were allowed to have and like with their licenses and whatever. And the guy's like, oh, I just wanted to come up to the meeting, I can't hunt birds. And then they asked him like what kind of gun he had and stuff. He's like, oh, I don't have a gun or whatever. And they kind of were like, oh, do you use like a bow? And he's like, no. And it turns out this guy uses a falcon to hunt geese and stuff. And he's like, I can't hunt the geese because I'm scared of bird flu and I don't want my hunting birds to die. So he's got to be really careful with that. And I thought that was a really interesting,
Yeah.
like, and so did the guy I was talking to. I thought it was a really interesting version of hunting, using another animal. I
Yeah,
was like, that's
yeah.
awesome. I'd like a
I mean,
falcon.
it's quite natural because that's naturally what they would do.
Mhm.
And a real, I mean, I mean, and for me as well, hunting to shoot to eat. I mean, obviously a survival specialist. I've killed a lot of stuff in my time, and birds and animals to eat. So I see that as I'm not one of those people that's trying to hug a tree all the time and saying things like that. But I mean, I'll do that myself. If I have to hunt, I will hunt, and if I need to eat, I'll eat. And on survival, you have to. It's one of those things. But that's so interesting with regards to the hawk, the falconry piece there. I mean, that's pretty special to witness, and that's what they naturally do.
Mhm.
So it's not really going to make a great deal of difference regards, the ethical side of thing, because that is the way they do it. It's natural instinct. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to go out. I don't know the guy, like, but I'd want to meet him. So I want to A, meet his birds, and B, witness this thing because I think it'd be super cool.
Oh yeah, amazing. Yeah.
The I can't remember you spoke about the some of like there's more and more like hides and stuff in Europe and in England and stuff, and like I don't feel like we have that same thing over here because like I rarely see a hide. You might see a bench or
Yeah.
something, but
I
I
think
wonder
hides
why
and
that
blinds are
hasn't.
associated with shooting and hunting here, aren't they?
Yeah,
A
more
lot
like
of the
tree
time.
stands and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I went up to sort of cottage country up sort of when I was in Toronto, and I went up north and I took a little single man hide with me and I parked it on the waterside after the common loon, and the amount of people thought I was shooting, not with a camera but with a gun. The amount of people stopped and looked at me and gave me sort of evils as if to say, "What's this guy doing?" Uh, and so you can definitely tell that blinds and hides aren't really used that much here, and I suppose there's not always a great deal of regard to do so because I find a lot of the birds, especially when I was in Toronto, they're very habituated to humans anyway. You don't really have that. Well, in the UK, you got no. I got no. The shots I got in Toronto, I got no chance of getting those in the UK without an awful lot of hard work. I still found myself, how on earth is this red-tailed hawk let me walk up to it 10 foot? It's just bonkers, really, because that would never happen. You'd be half a mile away and it'd see you and fly off at home.
I'll be perfectly honest. I'm an hour north of Toronto, and it's the same.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
They'll fly as soon as
Oh,
you
okay.
stop your car. So
There's a
it's very specific to just the foot
Mm.
traffic, the hustle and bustle of the city, the constant, the pedestrians, all that stuff. So it definitely, you get out of the city and it's very much like everywhere else you'd imagine, very difficult.
But what you were saying about the baiting side as well, compared with here to the UK, I think here as well, although I've only witnessed very small amounts of baiting, there is a barred owl close by here that's in a well-known sort of park, very small park, and I was excited to see it because a photographer through Instagram said, "Oh, it was a barred owl," because I haven't seen one yet. I haven't actually seen that many owls yet, and so I wanted to go and see it, and then I was then told that it was baited daily by a local that would go to a pet shop and get food and go and feed it, and you can walk right up to it. And I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to go there now, irrespective
Yeah.
of the fact that I want to see a barred owl up close. I wouldn't go there and see it because it just wouldn't feel right to me. So that's
Right.
now been habituated to being fed, and it's still there now. And it's the same with the great greys that were which were nearby here, 20 minutes from where I live. But apparently there are sadly some professional wildlife photographers that have run workshops that go out and they condition the owls to be fed before the workshop starts until they get into a position where they'll then take food around humans, and some of them even follow them around. And this one bird has. I mean, as a professional wildlife photographer, I don't know how on earth someone could do that, but I guess it's money, and the clients want to get a shot. No client on a workshop wants to walk away with nothing. They want to have an owl. They want to get a
Right.
picture of an owl. And if they don't get a picture, they'll be asking questions. Why didn't I get a shot? When they don't really realize that wildlife is wildlife, and it's not always
Yeah.
guaranteed. So, having seen that, and for myself being told where they are, do I go visit? Do I witness the behavior? What do I do? Do I intervene? Maybe, maybe not. some people can be a little bit vicious, I think, especially with the
Mm-hmm.
snowies around here as well. There's been quite a good few snowies around certain parts of Ottawa at the moment, and has been, and people are doing the same there. So for me as a photographer, I want to go and see these birds so badly. You know, I really want to see them in their natural habitat. But do I want to go and witness people flushing them to fly? Do I want to witness people feeding them voles from the pet shop, mice from the pet shop, or whatever? I had a chat when I was with some people who were feeding some birds of prey with shot deer, and they're saying, well, you know, they feed off carcasses anyway. What's the difference between it being shot or naturally dying? And I'm kind of like, yeah, but there's a difference in it, isn't there? Really, it's kind
there is.
you either get it or you don't. And
Yeah.
I think you know a good friend of mine, Vince Maiden.
Yep.
So Vince and I chat at length. He's an extremely ethical chap and very knowledgeable, good photographer, and he lives in the UK now. But yeah, he's kind of, we sing off the same hymn sheet really. We talk about it at length, and it's worrying because it doesn't seem to be an awful lot of people that really stand up for it. And even companies and organisations, sadly, don't. And I shan't name and shame, but a lot of them don't care or don't know or turn a blind eye because it's all about likes, what people get on Instagram, how many followers they got, and I don't think they want to know. And you know, it's kind of, and it's even the way people turn around to me and say, "How can you stand there and say, you know, you shouldn't bait wildlife?" When the BBC Natural History Unit do bait to get imagery and video of wildlife for natural history programs, and I'm kind of like, they're kind of like the oracle of production for the UK, and they're known worldwide. I'm not slating them massively and mentioning anything necessarily particular about it, but they do that, and they don't always declare things. And you know, it's kind of like years ago they got in trouble with polar bears. They did a polar bear giving birth, and it was one of the natural history programs, and Frozen Planet, I think. And they didn't declare that it was actually in captivity, and they filmed it there, but they used it, portrayed it as it was done in the wild. Ethically, there again, you know, it's kind of like deceiving the eye of the public, really, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I'm only one guy with a small following, just doing what I do. I can't change the world, but if I can change a couple people's ideas and they could do it maybe a way that'd be more satisfying to them, then you've kind of doing your thing. But or I could just say, you know, just turn a blind eye into it and say nothing. But I feel as if I owe it to wildlife conservation and to do my bit, at least to educate others the best I can, without getting absolutely like hammered by somebody.
Yeah.
But it's tricky, yeah. But
the crazy part about it to me is like, because there's at least there's 3 people in this room that are all kind of on the same page with this stuff. But then, like we've talked about and you've mentioned, like there are people who are like just not on the same wavelength as we are. And I think, I don't know if it was last winter or the winter before, I saw a picture, and it was like the most blatant picture that was clearly baited because it was a snowy owl coming in low to pick up a white mouse. And I was like, you're not going to find a white mouse just ripping across the snow. Like they don't exist really unless they're albino and it's really, really, really random. And 2, like it's not going to be there. Like you're not going to get that close. And it turns out this person was near Ottawa, were baiting and running these photography trips. And a couple of us may or may not have called them out kind of publicly on Instagram. And I can't remember. Yeah.
It's tempting, and sometimes I see no harm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If they're gonna post, you'd be surprised how many, if you go on their websites, how many actually don't say like, it's wildlife, there's no guarantees. There's only a handful of them that actually will say like there's no guarantees, like with these workshops, because most of the time they will guarantee it.
They will guarantee it, and they get it. It's really sad because I think sometimes people just missing. I mean, the trouble is, I'm only going on what I feel myself, but I think half the fun of it is I go out and I don't expect to get. I mean, how many, you guys as well, how many really good shots have you taken in your life? Probably a handful or
Negative
something.
4.
Yeah.
-4 for Kyle and 2 for, like, I bet there's 3 photos that are like really good photos, and that's it out of tens of thousands.
And exactly.
Okay, Mr. National Geographic calendar.
No, Canadian, just Canadian.
Canadian
Wow,
Geographic.
that's all right.
Not that national. Rain is the national, the
good.
Nat Geo guy.
But
Yeah,
like you were talking about. Sorry, I was just gonna say, you were talking about how you like love the experience of seeing and experiencing an animal that's like not baited and like it could be random, like you don't know what you're expecting. And honestly, that's my favorite experiences too, is when you, especially if that subject seems okay with you, so you're like, oh, like also it's fine that I'm here. So that's the tip top
But
experience for
also,
me.
I think you can tell, certainly with even birds of prey species, most of the time we always think, even as a photographer, you've got good field craft. No matter how good you are, most of the time wildlife, whether it be mammal, bird, kind of know you're there before you know
Oh yeah.
and they've always got the edge. But there's occasionally sometimes when you
Yep.
watch natural behavior and you kind of know that you're actually getting some exclusive view into the bird's world or mammal's world, and you're kind of enjoying that, and sometimes you don't want to press the shutter. Or now you've obviously got silence, so it's not so bad. But you can also tell when it's baited that birds, almost when you've watched bird species for long enough, and I've done work with wildlife organisations back in the UK under license with certain protected birds of prey species. And when you watch like birds long enough, you do realise that they do act differently when it's natural and when it's not. And if they look for a prey on a post, they wonder why it's on there, what's it doing there, what's the trick, and they behave differently. It's almost very hurried and very nervous. So you're getting a shot of a bird that's looking at the camera most of the time, and they're not actually naturally. So it's not really for the photographer. It's not really some sort of one-off amazing shot that you're never going to get again. It's kind of that it's just all set up, and yeah, and yeah, it's
Right.
yeah. I think you just. I mean, you tried it. I talked to my wife at length about it, and she goes, "Oh, it is only your opinion, though." And I'm going, "I know, but I know how I feel about."
It's yours, but it's shared with many.
Yeah, and it's nice when you do get people that do agree, and my following goes up and down like a yo-yo really, because people, as soon as I start going into ethics and sort of saying stuff, they get all funny about it and then don't follow me anymore, and that's that. But it is what it is, it doesn't bother me really either way. I'll do what I do regardless of how many people follow me anyway. I love what I do,
Sure.
and it'll never change. And the excitement, I mean, I'm coming up to 50 soon. I've been doing photography since I was 10. I've been into birds since I could pick up a pair of bins. So yeah, I feel at the moment the way the world's going, and it's a pretty tricky place out there at the moment. Poor old wildlife's going to suffer even more. But you just got to do your bit and keep on doing it. And if you can just change a few, then that's great. And if you don't, you don't. I think you bang the drum long enough, and I've got not a big enough presence to make a massive difference. But I'd like to think maybe that one day people will turn around and go, actually, it might come round again, and maybe reinvent the wheel a bit. Who knows? Yeah, I'll never change. That's for sure. But
silly
My
thing that
experiences locally is there's many more reluctant to the change, and I think that's also the pressure of the community on socials
yeah,
and keeping up with the Joneses.
oh, it's massive.
And sharing and not being left behind, the FOMO, all that comes along with it. They're not even stopping to really consider any of that because everything moves so fast.
Yeah, social
It's kind
media.
of on to the next thing.
It's people's highs and lows, and they get forced and pushed to then go unethically because they need to get the shots,
Right.
because they're competition, if you like. I mean, I'm in competition with nobody. Kind of it. I just do what I do, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think, and there's the mental health element as well. People are up and down on social medias because they don't get enough follows. They kind of think, what's going on, and they're forced to then get something that they ordinarily wouldn't have got.
Yeah.
It's really it's social media. I always say it's a necessary evil, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It is one of those things, but it's also very good in some respects. But I think most of the time, the way it's going at the moment, and with AI, which is a whole new ball game, isn't it? But that's a nightmare at the moment.
I mean, I love AI.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I love the AI photos and
Yeah.
it being
It's amazing what it
passed
can
off
do.
as something.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love playing with it. I love messing around. I don't think that the accounts that are passing off AI photos as real photos is what we're talking about, or I'm talking about. But my social media kind of issues more have been more people based than it is keeping up with the people.
Yeah.
I kind of go in and out of social media based on what I see and I kind of have to step back just because it affects me mentally on what I kind of see people going for, the low hanging fruit, the parks that I know are issues, the conversations that I may have with them that they just kind of gaslight and think they're not kind of part of the problem. That's where my concerns with social media personally are, is I deal with the ups and downs just from the people themselves.
Yeah.
As it is versus, me trying to keep up with them and post.
Yeah.
That's not really my issue, but
One thing that I like to do, and that I've kind of always said about my own photography, which isn't great, but I'm getting better, is that like I'm trying to show the birds doing what they do where they do it without me kind of interfering in any way. And one of the dumb little things that I like to do is at work we have this little program we use for, it's kind of like an internal social media if you want to think about it that way. And every Friday I'll post a bird picture. And like I've had every level of people there, from just corporate leaders to like new people being like, I really like these photos. And I think every Friday I look forward to the one that you post. And I've posted a few owls, and I'll often have I have a couple pictures of a barred owl that's like tucked in with his eyes closed, sleeping and stuff like that. And a couple people have commented like, why don't your owls ever like looking at the camera and stuff? So then I've taken the time to explain to these people who aren't bird people, like, yes, the photo is better if the bird or a subject is looking at you. But for me, an owl that's sleeping, or an owl that's preening, or an owl that's like doing what it's doing, regardless if I'm there or not, that's a comfortable, that's a content, that's not a stressed out owl. And I actually have my own picture that Matt was with, that we ended up taking a picture of a very stressed owl, kind of accidentally, but it was sort of funny at the same time. Me and another guy, and Matt were walking through a park in Toronto, and we're just carrying on, having a good time. We had kind of walked around all day already, and we were just like laughing and Matt was like, guys, shut up, there's a saw-whet right here. And 6 feet off the trail was a small pine tree, and there was a little saw-whet sitting on a deer mouse, but it was like eyeball level. And like we happened to be close to the tree, and it stared us down with these big eyes, like, clearly go away.
3 feet off my shoulder.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So I show that pictures to these people. Like I took a few pictures, and then we maybe only stood there for 10 seconds. Like the bird didn't fly away. Like we left there where it was. But I was like, this owl, you can tell, anybody can tell this owl's stressed. Its eyes are this big. It's staring straight at me like this. And it's like, you can see the little tail like underneath. So I was like, this is a comfy owl, not stressed out. This is a one that's upset. And then people are like, oh, okay. So I'm trying to take the time to educate like non-birders, to try to even tell them about how much this means to me.
I think that's the thing, is key is education. A lot of people, and sometimes I think you kind of get desensitized when you're around it all the time, is that you forget that other people don't see and feel the way you do. And it's kind of, when you actually explain yourself, they're like, really? I didn't know that. Well, birds would do that. Or, they kind of think they're a completely, so far away from thinking what we do. It's kind of, but actually there's a lot more to it, I think. And I think like explaining to people how it all works and how nature works, and I think they like the story to it, I think. And that's why it's story behind an image is a lot better than just like we're all forced to put a smack bang post in the middle on Instagram, just with a bird in the middle or whatever. It's always a bit like, sometimes I do it myself and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Matt loves a ridiculous description in an Instagram post.
If you've noticed, like, I don't write a caption. I can't come to something that feels genuine. I can't come to something that doesn't feel forced. I just take the photo. Yeah. Most of the time, the photo that you see is the photo that the situation I came upon. I take the photo and I'm in and out quickly.
Yeah.
Most species, even songbirds, I spend minutes with.
Yeah.
I don't really run like my own little like goals in mind on what type of shot I want. It's just what presents is what I take and what I share. And there's not much of a story to that, in my opinion. I'm also not very creative, so I'm not the type of guy to write up an essay about it. But I also read some essays and I'm like, this sounds like horse shit.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm a natural skeptic. I am a natural skeptic. So you got to know that about me too.
I think sometimes, like you say, the sort of photography, you shoot from the hip and move on. It's not kind of hang around too long. And also because you start to stress the subject out and they start to sort of behave a bit differently. If you can just take a picture, leave it as you found it, and then on you go, it's kind of nice, really. But like you say, I always try to put something in, like a bit of, I don't know, if you look up facts about certain species, every species got a fact about some
Sure.
sort of adaptation or whatever that you could just put out there and just try to educate someone on. I didn't realise that kestrels can see urine trails of voles because of the UV spectrum and all that. It's kind of, and they're like, oh
I
blimey,
didn't
that's
know that.
amazing. And you kind of like, oh,
It really is.
but every bird has got its thing.
Sure.
It's
Well, that's what got us into birding in the first place, is like
Yeah.
you don't really appreciate birds until you start to actually really understand those intricate details and information on each species. And that's what really, I think, brings you into the
It
bird
does,
world.
yeah. And the migration aspect and the breeding and all this sort of stuff is kind of like, wow. I mean,
It's
tiny little
bizarre.
things like that, especially the migration side. I mean, you're like, blimey. So that's the thing about it's not just going to a kingfisher hide, putting fish down through a pipe and taking a picture. It's
Right.
actually learning about the coloration of kingfisher, how it actually tricks the eye, and all these sorts of things. And you kind of like get back, you read up on a book, go on the internet, have a look, you build up your knowledge, you study a species, you move on with different projects and stuff. Yeah, that's the fascinating thing. It's always a school day. You always learn something new, and that's what keeps me going. And I've never ever got to a point where I think that I've done my bit and I'm moving on to something else, because it's one of those things that's always been with me. It's just like we're saying about the ethics thing. I think at the moment the UK is particularly bad. Canada, I guess, has its areas. And one thing I struggle in Canada really is the provinces and the laws. Obviously, Quebec, it's illegal to bait birds and mammals in Quebec, I'm led to believe, but it's not in Ontario. Is that right? Apparently.
You're teaching us stuff, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah, Quebec.
It
you're
should
not
be
allowed to,
illegal.
yeah.
It should be illegal in general, if you ask me. But
Yeah, I haven't read into it,
Yeah.
but apparently it's illegal in Quebec to bait birds and mammals, but it's not in Ontario. So, you can just nip over the water and off you can't do it,
Yeah.
but you come back over and you can. It's kind of a weird thing I can't really understand, but there's obviously that's a massive rabbit hole. But it's a shame that things like that, it wasn't a broad spectrum of stuff. There's awful stuff going on in obviously Alberta at the moment with the cougars and things. Down in Canmore with Johnny Marriott and his fighting the cause down there. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it just seems lots of things at the moment kind of, it's I think wildlife and nature is under threat massively from everything, and I think trying to limit the impact or do something positive to fight for them is whether it's down to not getting them fed, baited, chased, hounded. It's I think you just got to do your bit. I can't turn a blind eye myself, sadly, and sometimes I wish I could do more and I could fight the corner a bit harder. But just one voice, and I get lynched over here if I start shouting too much.
Nah.
I won't make it back to the UK.
There's only tens of people that are going to be upset here. So.
Yeah, there'll be like 56 people maximum that'll be upset about this podcast.
Well, we'll start to promote the Angry Birds podcast anyway. I'll start pushing it out there. So, and I know there's a lot of people. If I'm talking about ethics, there's a lot of people in the UK are going to be listening to think what's he saying?
Oh, good.
So,
good.
That's good. Hey,
to extend your
it's
reach,
something to listen to.
Yeah,
excellent.
I think that would help. But I think I've always wanted to do this. You see, really and there's a few new podcasts in the UK that are kicking off now with some photographers, but I don't think they'll be inviting me on somehow. Yeah,
you're welcome anytime, Richard.
They're kind of like limiting themselves, because you really kind of need to see the other side of it too, and hear that voice as well.
Of course, yeah. I mean, say we're all pretty much, the same minds with regards ethics and things. I think there is, it's always down to your own opinion, but there is also other sides.
Sure.
And I said before about conservation projects, birds in decline and mammals in decline, the conservation work they do to bring species back from the brink. They have to bait, have to do that to bring the species back, and that's all great, and that's amazing work. I think sometimes, and I won't name any particular situation, but there are situations in the UK with certain species that were in danger, and now they've been brought back, and now they're doing really well. They're recovering on their own. They're doing exceptionally well, but sadly, they're still getting baited and habitually fed when they're already basically on recovery and they're doing well on their own. So it's a case of people don't want to leave the money. It's kind of, it's there. It's tourism. Ecotourism.
That comes down to a photo at the end of the day. It's your own. It's like your own personal, endeavor at the end. Like you're not really getting anything out of it other than the individual itself.
Yeah.
You know.
One of my bucket list birds is to see a California condor at some point.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
And I learned this last time I was down there. 'Cause I have family that lives in San Francisco or close to it. There's a spot down south of that called Monterey. Really cool for if you're a snorkeler or a diver, like tip world renowned like reefs and stuff. And they had the Monterey Bay Aquarium kind of had a sea otter rehabilitation program that worked really well. But I didn't also know that the California condors, the Monterey area is one of the areas where they release the birds that they've bred in captivity and can send back out. So I really want to spend some time down there to try to see one of those. But I feel like that's one of those birds too, where it might get, I kind of hope and I kind of don't hope it gets to the point of what you said, where the conservation efforts work enough that they can reestablish. But then I hope that they're left alone at a certain point where they not continue to be fussed with.
That's the thing. I guess there's not many. I don't know of many that have actually pulled away and gone, yeah, they're doing well. They've recolonized areas. They're back. Do we need to still feed them on a however basis, or we may supplement feeding now and then, or keep an eye on them? I mean, it's amazing work they do to bring stuff back from the brink of extinction. But I think sometimes at the moment people are, and people hide behind, with going back to sort of the baiting thing, people hide behind and say, well, the species are, you know, in the winter time they have the lack of food. We're sort of great for the breeding season. We're helping them and all this sort of stuff. And part of that is true. You know, it does help the species through the winter, but it doesn't. It's not an excuse to do it all the time. You know, it's not an excuse and it's happening all the time now. It's kind of one of those, isn't it? It's a fine balance. That's all. And because they're popping up everywhere, it's happening more and more now, and people just want a slice of it. A friend of mine said recently, who's a fairly ethical chap, he said to me, and he's finished, he's retired now, and he kind of said to me, well, he said, oh, such and such is doing that now, and they're doing really well out of it, so why shouldn't I? You know, it's kind of like, well, that's up to you. You know, it's up to you as an individual. I mean, I've got lots of my friends and people I know that do bait, and they're still my friends, but you know, I can't sort of cut everybody away like that, but I still don't agree with what they're doing, but I still won't fall out with them about it.
There was a forest.
Yeah,
there was a forest near where I used to live that someone had left a speaker in a tripod for like a week, just playing like warbler sounds so that they would like hang around this bush. And I saw someone post that on a local bird group, and I wanted to go there and just like smash all this stuff. And just leave it there, but I didn't do it. But like I get the passion about wanting to like do something, and you're like, no, this is bad.
It is. I mean, I'd say reels or playing tapes and reels and stuff like that, especially during the breeding season, will stress birds out, especially males on territory, can cause a great deal of stress in an already stressful time. So, and I found that a lot when I was in Toronto. Actually, I went to Tommy Thompson Park, so Leslie Street's bit, and so much of that was going on along there. People. Mobile phones going off all the time and people bringing them in, and you know we do that for survey work in the UK, but only under license, because in the UK, I don't know if you're aware, but we, with protected species in the UK, say things like barn owl, goshawk, hen harrier, marsh harrier, loads of other bird species are under a thing called Schedule 1 protection. So you have to have a license to be around the species during the breeding season, whether that's photographically or around the nest. So, and if you're caught, you can face prison if you get caught disturbing birds that are protected under law. So it's the Wildlife and Countryside Act. So they don't have such laws, I don't think, in North America. So back in the UK, you get caught doing that. I mean, you're probably not going to get sent down for it, but you probably get a hefty fine and you'll get a slap on the wrist. And then if you do it again, you're in trouble. So, and that's a lot of that. And it's very well protected, but you know, trying to find someone in the middle of nowhere doing something illegal or stealing eggs, etc. So at least we have those safeguards in place, but it still goes on, egg theft and stuff like that, and especially peregrine falcons, massive.
Yeah.
But
a lot of
you guys on our money.
A lot of our
we got to get Charles to set those rules up here.
A lot of our issues are it's self-governance, and we just don't do a great job at it. You know, like we have this kind of like, I don't want to use the word freedom, but we have the freedom to go where we want and do what we want to do, and to self-govern. And I don't know if we do a very good job at it as a whole. I'm not, and I sound very like negative about it. Like I said, I am kind of like a skeptic. And I'm sure there are, like, we go to Tommy Thompson quite a bit. That's where Kyle and I first had met.
It's a
That's
great
where
place. Yeah.
it's wonderful. We've never been in the summer.
No.
We go for ducks, and we go for maybe a bit of owls. We go for a hike, and it's our winter spot. That's where we like to go.
Yeah, it's great for Harriers, Northern Harriers as well. Let's get along there.
It's there's always a harrier flying
One
around.
female just rips around there all the time.
Yeah, I love it.
But now that you've mentioned like just like the callback all the time, I probably won't go in the summer. I'm very much a like, nope. I've heard it. Nope. I don't want to be part of it. I'm just very much that guy, because there's so many other places to shoot.
There is. It's a really good spot, though. I must admit, it's really nice down there, especially on a nice evening. You haven't always got the best backdrops with regards lots of concrete, but kind of that also adds to an effect.
You don't like the rebar and the rubble?
Yeah, nice.
What is it all completely built out of?
But I know I loved it. I loved it there, and there was a nice lot of coyotes down there, but I never managed to get any luck with those. But I certainly did see owls and harriers there. Lots of good bird species as well. Smaller bird species, merlin were always in there as well, which was good. It was one of my favourite spots, really, and unusual for me to be in an environment like that where it's so heavy sort of people, because it's a big old area. The GTA.
It is. I think it's easy to break away there if you really want to. Like, there's certainly a lot of offshoots and trails that you could break away and be on your own. And I've had owl days of 4 or 5 owls and had not come across another person, just kind of doing my own thing, where there's smaller parks with more congregation of individuals that I've stayed away from. I don't know if that makes me any better. I don't know if this is like a a tier comparison, but
I know we've been talking kind of all negatively about it all, but there's also a lot of great work. I mean, the Toronto Field Naturalist Group do a really good job there. I went to a few lectures at Downsview actually there, and that we're just talking, educating people. Lots of Instagram posts about like getting close to wildlife and keeping distance and all that. So there's an awful lot of people as well that are ethical in Canada. I think probably as a whole, there's probably more ethically people minded in Canada than there is in the UK. And Vince and I have chatted about it at length, and absolutely the UK. I mean, you get absolutely lynched if if they were doing what they're doing in the UK over here. I think over here they've got a lot more. It's a lot better, and a lot of people are more conservation minded and ethically minded here. There's obviously people that aren't, but my gosh, here if you were to do something like that, people would call you out, wouldn't they? Here, and I think it's great. I mean, and that's the thing. It's good that and there's people in Canada have said to me, people in the UK, it always seems to be just baited hides all the time, and people are saying that. It's kind of shocking, really. But
do you think that the upgraded, do you think the ability of today's modern gear has had an uprise in the amount of people that are doing wildlife photography specifically?
Yeah, I would say I'm not sure if it's the sort of advancements of it, but I certainly know since the dreaded COVID that obviously people in the natural world have then decided to
that's when I started.
Yeah, and
that's when I started. I've had a camera in my hand since 2010, but wildlife was right around 2020 when it was like, hey, go for a walk because that's all you can do.
Yeah, and it's just the actual resurgence. When I was like 10 years old, back in all those years ago, I was absolutely teased and ribbed at school because I like birds. Because back then it wasn't cool, hip, and trendy. It was you're a geek and there's something wrong with you. So, and now it seems to be the in thing that people. I mean, I've had people that used to take the mickey out of me all the time that are now out there with a pair of binoculars or a camera, and they're loving it, and they're taking a big interest in what I do, and they're reporting back they've seen such and such, or they need an ID on a bird. And it's it's amazing because there's lots of people that are getting out in nature now, and it's obviously very good for the mental health side, as people have proven. I think it's a great thing. I think, but then that's when the responsibility piece and the education comes in. That if people are going to do that, it's nice just to subtly, without spoiling it for them, it's just to sort of say, enjoy it, do it. Everybody's got the right to do it, but just do it responsibly and just give them a bit of space. And I think it has. Then the technology is is bonkers now. I mean, with regards to since mirrorless came in and the AF tracking on, you can literally
that's what I was kind of referring
so
to.
lazy.
That's why I look so good right now.
I mean, gosh, you just point the camera and it just tracks and finds the head and off you go. It's just like, blimey. I mean, I've started doing loads of retros and going back to using old cameras, and it's hard. It's hard work, but it's.
I was just gonna say, like, it might even deter more people to go. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Everyone should start on an old DSLR.
I did.
If you can do it here,
but not wildlife. But
you started on a Fuji. That was even worse.
I did. I shot a Fuji XT1, which was like lock focus, recompose for the first 2 or 3 years, and then I decided to get a Canon R8 that had some advanced features, but still is somewhat budget.
I was shooting today with,
but it would deter.
The first ever homegrown DSLR by Canon, which was the Canon D30, which is a 3.25 megapixel camera. I bought one real cheap from a store in Ontario, and it cost me next to nothing. And I went out with it today with 3 focus points, 3 frames a second. And honestly, it's tricky, but it's fun because you can really and it does take some great pictures. But obviously, if you press the shutter 3 times consecutively, it locks out, and it takes a while, and you can't look at the screen at the back. So it takes ages to come up, but it's quite fun. But you really are spoilt now with the modern tech.
You weren't shooting kinglets though, were you?
No. No.
Okay, that's the new challenge. If you can get a kinglet shot with that,
yeah. Like you say though, the technology is just absolutely incredible. But the thing is, I like to be reminded sometimes that you pick up an old camera and you have to really work for it. Whereas now you are spoiled. But do I like mirrorless over DSLR? I like a bit of both, and it's good for sensitive subjects. At least it's better for the subjects not getting that crazy shutter going off, and off they go in the wrong direction.
Right.
The other guy we're talking about, Craig, shoots the Nikon D500, and I'll be like with my mirrorless camera, like, and he'll be behind me going,
yeah.
Like,
I get
quiet down.
I get PTSD every time I'm shooting with someone that still has a full mechanical shutter.
There's a certain amount of snobbery now, I think, as well. If you're in a hide, apparently, if you're in a hide and someone's got a DSLR and it goes off like a machine gun, people are like, you almost get like pushed out the room.
Big like 1DX or something, just rattling.
Because that's the problem.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
You're too noisy.
Yeah, the old
You're disrupting the animals who are baited.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, so there's the advancements in tech is amazing, especially for sensitive subjects. So actually, it's probably really good for that, but dependent on what they're like. But I think you're right, though. I think the modern ease of camera tech now, phones, if you get like sort of enthusiast mirrorless models, it's amazing what they can achieve now. It certainly makes it available for everybody, which makes competition harder, and that thirst to get online and get your images there. But
and everyone fighting for that spot of that next ambassadorship or that next content creator, or for sure.
Yeah, there is. I mean, the competition is so high. I think for myself, I really didn't, before I left the military. I was always into photography and always into the natural world, but when I left, it was kind of like it still wasn't really that popular. But it's certainly in the last kind of near 10 years, I suppose, or maybe a little bit less. It's just gone through the roof now, absolutely through the roof. It's a good thing. It's a great thing that people are getting out there and doing it. It's just hopefully that people can do it in a good way and just appreciate and give them a bit of space, really.
Do you like when you see a picture? I've seen it a bunch. I usually find that it's with short-eared owls for some reason specifically, where people will post a picture of like an owl between photographers. So there'll be a bunch of people on that end, the owl between, and then like the guy taking the picture, the person taking the picture. And then they were like, great day with a bunch of like people watching these owls. And there's always like 30 people with tripods standing there. And every time I see that, I my head goes, that's not a good thing. Move, like, be different. Like, go find a different one. Like, why do you always want to be there with the same 20 people getting the same pictures as everyone else?
Well, that's the thing.
And then I was like, You're too
It's no real.
close.
I think I always like saying there's no real challenge there. I think, I mean, if no matter what you do, I think you always like to be tested, and it's a bit of a challenge. You got to work for it. For me, anyway, rather than the ease of the shot that everybody else is getting.
Yeah, I
Find a
agree.
unique angle. Go and find something different. It's like, and I was chatting to a friend today, a very good wildlife photographer. He lives in the US, and he told me where the great greys were, and I was, I want to see one of those birds. That'd be amazing. But do I want to go there and be surrounded by people throwing mice and voles and lots of
That just
people?
taints the
I'd get there and
It
just walk around.
taints the experience.
I'd just walk.
Yeah.
I'd just turn around and go back. If I could have
Yep.
time with them on my own
Yep.
for an hour or so, that'd be great, and then I could leave. But as soon as a load of people turn up, or I start witnessing that sort of behaviour, it would just it spoiled for me, really. I mean, Canada's such a big place. I mean,
Right.
I've been looking for owls a lot locally on my own patch where there's not a lot of people, and it's so hard even this time of the year.
Mhm.
There's a barred owl locally to me, and I can't find it, and I'm pretty good at finding stuff, but it's in there. And when I find it, I'll look forward to it. But
For sure.
yeah,
That's the
I mean,
reward.
and then
That
It's
brings
the
me to a
effort.
question.
you
Yeah.
got thermal imaging now, so people then find them straight away. But
Yeah.
it's
I heard about that recently. I was like,
there's
that's
loads of it now. Yeah,
is that genius or is that cheating?
well,
It's
there's
genius.
the thing. Well, one thing
I'm
is
not
good,
saying
though.
I would use it, but it's genius.
A lot of people say, "Oh," because I've been approached by a few companies about doing some reviews on thermal imaging stuff, and I'm kind of like, well, at least if you're looking from a distance and you can find the bird, at least you save you crashing around and flushing it. I suppose is one good thing.
That's true.
And it's good for observations for survey stuff and survey work.
Mhm.
I guess I'm not totally against them, provided I suppose it's used responsibly. I guess, but it's just another method
Yeah.
of wildlife having to. I've got nowhere to hide. Really, it's the trouble.
Right. The thing
gonna
is, once
share-
it gets popular enough, it will be
Yeah, and they're
abused.
affordable. I mean, you can get a
Yeah.
monocular now, which is real cheap. A company spoke to me today and said, "Do you want one?" And I don't think it was that much. It was like $350 or something. It's probably not that good. I don't know, but I kind of thought, well, do I really want to? Probably not.
Well, you can send
I get
them our email for
Yeah,
sponsorship.
we'll send him the angry. I got a small story, and then it's gonna be followed up with a question that I think fits in nicely here. So, my favorite owl is barred owls for sure. I just think they're awesome, just in every way. And there was a local park that for a bunch of years had one that seemed to return, or one or two, and it was always in this one sort of spot in the woods. And it got to the point where like I went there with a friend and we are just walking around this park before I knew kind of where in the park that it was supposed to be. And the locals that would live there are like, "Oh, you're looking for the owl." And I'm like, "Yeah." And like I was like, "Where?" And they're like, "Oh, sometimes he's on this branch, sometimes he's over here." But like it was the sort of more of the photographer people that were like, "Oh, he's usually tucked up in this spot." This year, one of Matt and I's friends, who's also named Kyle, mentioned to me, he's like, "This park has a barred owl again." So I went to that spot and I found it. And the year before, someone had told me where some short-eared owls were, and there was like a popular spot, and then like there was another spot, similar area that like less people knew about. So she was like, "Go here." And this person has ties locally to where I was. So I told her, I was like, "Hey, the barred owl is back at this park." And then the next day she went, and so did the guy who told me that the owl was there. And then I kind of felt bad because he's like, "There are people here." And I was like, "I think it's this person and she's cool. Like she's fine." But then I was like, am I a jerk now because he told me, I've told someone else. And I'm like now part of this dumb chain of people telling where owls are. Like, I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and it's okay, I have certain people that I trust that I'll be like, I will tell you where this cool thing is because I know that you will act ethically. The problem then becomes if they tell somebody. What do you think about kind of giving away owl locations and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same mind. I think you kind of trust the person you tell. I think, and as long as they, I was actually chatting to someone today about the same sort of thing. That it's one of those things you don't want to be selfish and just enjoy it on your own without sort of sharing the love, if you like, of a nice species, bird, mammal, whatever, when you know where they are. I think you got to be careful in who you tell, because like 9 times out of 10, I won't say anything, and then you tell, and it's like, tell your mate, look, it's there, but please don't say anything, and it just a knock-on effect, and you've really got to trust the other person, I think, because it ultimately then everybody turns up and the bird's gone and you've pushed it on again. So yeah, for me here, don't have that many friends in Canada, really, like photographer birder friends. So I got a couple. And they're pretty good, and they don't give much away. They're quite like cloak and dagger. It's kind of keep it to themselves. And because I'm a YouTuber as well, if I do any videoing or any sort of footage, I either don't do it at that location because there's any landmarks that can give it away, or I'll just show trees and grass, and there's nowhere they could find out where it is. My footprint, no GPS tagging on my images or anything like that. So I guess I'm careful with everything, careful who I tell. And there's this very, very, very small network here. I would only say kind of 3 people, I guess. And they're the same type as me. You know, they've told me the locations, they've trusted me. It's only my duty then to keep it to myself and not pass it on. And I don't really know enough people to pass it on. Back in the UK, where I live, it was very much no one really comes down there en masse where we are, but you know, other places in the UK, yeah, it's horrendous. But yeah, so for me, I would just keep it to a select few. Really have to trust them. Hopefully, they can keep it quiet. And if they didn't, then I wouldn't tell them again for sure.
I think that goes back to your comment, or your, Kyle, on that photograph of like the owl and then 30 people. Those 30 people are probably that network. And it's almost like that, like kind of social aspect of it. Every time they kind of go and see each other, and their group is much larger than maybe Richard's would be, or certainly mine. I'm kind of a nomad in that regard, and I try to shoot.
A nomad.
There's not many people that actually do photography in the area that I live. I never see anybody, but
because a lot
I
of
also
birders,
don't.
not like, because I don't know if you've heard of the phrase twitchers.
Yes, that's like a European.
Yeah, UK,
Yeah,
European.
yeah,
I mean,
UK thing. Yeah,
they obviously turn up en masse if there's a species there, and that's a big thing.
Sure.
Tick lists, year lists, and all that sort of stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
I get it.
So
I hadn't heard that term before.
So I guess it might mean something else somewhere else, because there's a few Canadian words and a few Brit words that don't quite go together. And they
translate the same
quite
way.
Different. So you got to be careful. But yeah, I mean, equally, it's the same thing there. Footprint with or without a camera, it's still the noise, still the traipsing around, still the flushing and trying to get it to fly out of a bush, and tiny little warbler or something. So it's kind of, I do feel for the wildlife. I think they got it against them, really, and I do feel like wildlife paparazzi sometimes. It's kind of, but I try not to be like that. Try not to push them, irrespective if I want to see them or not, or if I've never seen the bird. I still would just rather walk away and leave it, and I'll find it one day on my own terms, or it might just surprise me and come out in front of me. And if it does, then that will be better than me than turning up with a load of other people with a load of cameras and a load of binoculars and just with tripods making a noise and just traipsing around trying to find it. Or then someone going, "It's over there. Can you see it? Do you want me to get out of the way?" And I'll just get my picture, and it's like, oh, that just absolutely makes me cringe, because that's the worst thing for me. I know. Oh yeah, no thanks. Yeah.
I've kind of already convinced myself that like this is kind of like a long-term, a lifetime thing. And when things happen, things are going to happen, and let it happen organically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I got another little story that's kind of funny. So my wife works at a place that makes signs, and like street signs, communities, or like municipal signs, that kind of stuff. And 2 years ago, a swallow-tailed flycatcher was seen near a butterfly conservatory, kind of on that property. Someone, I guess, went there to see butterflies, looked outside in the garden, and was like, "The crap is that?" And there's this bird, this vagrant that's just come from down south somewhere. So many people flocked to this butterfly conservatory, and I've been seeing on this local Facebook group for bird people, just like people constantly posting the world's worst pictures of this swallow-tailed flycatcher, because it was like way back into this field. But the butterfly conservatory was getting angry because people were standing in this field that they technically didn't own. It was just like the neighboring farmer's field. And so they actually, I don't even remember if I mentioned to my wife about it, but she messaged me or mentioned it to me one day. She's like, "Do you know about this bird that's at the butterfly conservatory?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "They ordered signs from us to tell people not to stand in the grass, like stand off the parking lot." And I ended up going there the one day because it's kind of one of those birds that it's like, it's not only that it's rare, but it's also not supposed to be here. So I was like, maybe I'll go look there. So I went there after work one day, and there was legitimately probably 40 or 50 people standing in this parking lot.
Wow.
And I was just like, this sucks. Like, this is the worst.
Yeah.
And then I'll conclude it here. The signs, the bird had moved on by the time the signs were even finished being made yet. Like, they didn't even get the signs yet, and the bird had already taken off. Like, people hadn't seen it in a couple of days, which I thought was really funny.
Oh, that is quite funny, and probably never likely to turn up again.
No, not at all.
And I think a lot of time, those poor species that are well off course, half the time they never make it back to their native sort of breeding grounds or wherever. They just end up usually dying, sadly. And after being chased around and hounded, it happens a lot of the time, really. And people just flock to it. And it's like one of those, everybody's got the right to see it, I think. It's just, sometimes it gets a bit competitive, I guess, and upmanship. People want to get the shot or whatever.
And you got those twitchers or whatever you call it. People are just like, I know people that are just like, gotta get that off my list. Like,
I've known
have the same motivation.
I've known people that have been in a wedding down south in the UK and their phone's gone off because there's been a certain species come up into the top of Scotland, and they've left the wedding and gone up to see it. You know, it's kind of like, sheepers, you've left your wife in a church for a family wedding and you've gone up north to see a bunting that's just come up on the Orkney Islands or something. Seriously,
so
man, you need to have a word with yourself. Like,
they'll probably get
hardcore.
married again.
but I mean, each to their own, you know. He didn't leave her at the altar. It was obviously a family wedding, and he was in attendance.
That would be funny.
You're kind of like, seriously. I mean, I love wildlife, man, but you can't go doing that. That's like crazy. But
yeah,
I mean, each to their own at the end of the day. But
It's like that movie Grumpy Old Men when they're out fishing, trying to catch the big fish on the day of the wedding. Do you remember that old movie? Yeah.
It's been a while, but I think I've seen it.
It's bonkers world, really.
I have one more question for myself. Like, what advice would you give to beginner photographers, or how can other photographers educate? I'm sure we touched on a little bit of ethical wildlife photography. Because, like you said, monkey see, monkey do, similar to that 8-year-old or 12-year-old or whoever it was with the kingfishers. That's his first experience. That's what he's going to go back to. What is that kind of like takeaway that you could give to like a new photographer when it comes to bird photography in general?
Yeah, I'd like to say there was a go-to place that you could go and learn. I would say, like, you know, Nat Geo Kids, or go on telly and see YouTube, some channels, wildlife watching, or go to your local wildlife trust or your nature park organization, go on a nature day for kids, all that sort of stuff. I think they're all really good. It depends on what age you are, I guess. Because I wouldn't say necessarily go and watch YouTube, because there's a lot of stuff on there that isn't ethical, and it's going to probably teach you the wrong way of doing it, in my eyes, that is. So yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot online if you're able to get on there and research subjects, how to do things, fieldcraft, I guess. There's not really any. I mean, certainly in Canada, I don't think there's any go-to place, but I think Nat Geo do good stuff for children. And I know a lot of the parks here, because Canada's very focused on families, kids getting out in the natural world, enjoying nature, because you've got a hell of a lot of it, and it's an amazing country to be in. So I think it's set up here rather well, and it is in the UK too. I think there's a lot of scope there for children to get out in nature. For photography-wise, though, I'm not sure there was any single thing I could say here, but certainly research online, magazines, books, because all these books, even going back when I was younger, the ethics were always there. It was kind of like observation notebook, keep your distance, respect nature, they are different, they will fly, it's kind of, it's almost, it's teaching the art of sneaking up on them, I guess. It's kind of like exciting for them, but in a respectful way. So there wouldn't be a one thing I could say is always is if you certainly want to, chase a species, or not chase a species, certainly if you want to track down a species, is learn about the species, learn about the behavior, times of day, where you like to find them, breeding cycles, all that sort of stuff. I know it sounds quite in depth, but it's just subject knowledge is key, I think, in getting out in the natural world. Certainly know your equipment as well. I think along those lines, really, I think it's within all of us really to know what's right and wrong with regard to what you're doing, and anybody can read, or you can then begin to understand bird behavior and mammal behavior when they are distressed and when they are nervous to your presence. They will act differently. I think it's back away, just have a look, give it time. All along those lines, really, it's just, I think we can all tell the best way of doing things. And I think a lot of the local workshops, I know even things like my son here is in beavers and things, and they learn an awful lot about nature and the natural world, and that's always the message is space, wildlife, separation, enjoy it responsibly, etc. So yeah, I'm aiming at sort of like kids, not necessarily adults, but obviously adults. There are a lot of YouTube channels out there. There are some that do it the right way, and they'll teach you from the basic sort of photography 101s, top 5 tips, getting into wildlife photography and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Perfect. And stay off social media for the first 3 years. How would that?
Yeah, don't go on socials.
Yeah, you have to lock yourself out of it for.
I don't know if that's kind of like wrapping that up. In the UK, I would know where to go exactly, I guess. But here, but Canada as a country, though, I think certainly for the natural world, I think they've got it right, and I think they're good to educate, and they do it in schools as well, and obviously colleges, and there's lots of photography courses you can go on, and I think they all teach like ethical practices if you're going to get into it anyway. But obviously, not all, sadly. But.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Unfortunately. Well, I don't know about you, but I've been talking for about an hour and a half. I think
we covered a lot. We covered a lot. Richard, you were exactly what I expected.
Oh God, I hope so. I'm not sure if I went.
Oh
off
no,
too much.
No, it was perfect. I knew you were the man for the job, because it's called Angry Bird for a reason, and I'm usually just focused on the negative aspect of it and just shaking my fists in the air. And I know you could at least keep us on a neutral level and share your experiences from here and the UK.
It'd be nice to like swear and shame and name and shame and all that sort of stuff, but I don't always think, for me personally, it doesn't always help the situation. And I'm trying, and I don't know if this bit's going to be aired or not, but I chat to my wife sometimes, and I get quite sort of emotional about it. And that's the thing. It's kind of like, why people don't understand, why are you getting so emotional about it? What's the big issue? But I kind of think whatever I'm taking a picture of, I have a relationship with, and it's kind of having that mutual understanding of not stepping too far, keeping within the boundaries. The best thing as a photographer is to go in, enjoy the moment, take a few pictures, enjoy it, move away, look back, and it's still doing what you did when you arrived. And that for me is the best thing ever.
My whole thing.
Yeah, it's just
well said.
Yeah, sort of leave it as you found it, really, and just take an image, move on, and don't stay too long. Just enjoy it, really, and use your own eyes. I think a lot of the time is don't always have something up in front of you. It's nice to use your own eyes, because sometimes you just it flies away and you're thinking, oh, got a picture of it, but I didn't actually remember seeing it properly.
Right. If you do want that unfiltered chat, look for it on our Patreon.
We don't have a Patreon yet.
Not yet. Oh, actually, you know what? I want you to hold on. I want you to tell where can people find you. Drop your socials. Drop your YouTube.
So yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and obviously YouTube as well. I do videos generally weekly, sometimes twice monthly, depending on how I do. I do a lot of things on ethics, what I get up to in the field, and some reviews and things like that. But hopefully you guys will be able to put the links in the description.
Yep.
Absolutely.
We should be able to do that.
For sure. Thank you so much, Richard. Honestly, it's been a great chat. It's really nice to when you find someone or some people that share the same kind of passions as you, especially because it's easy to find people who also like bird photography, but then clearly from this conversation, there's people who aren't in it for the same reasons that we are. And it's nice to have a conversation with people who are all seem to be the most like-minded. So I've really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun.
Agreed.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks very much indeed.
No, we'd love to have you on again. It was excellent.
Yeah, anytime. This has been the Angry Bird Pod Show. Let us know when you want the music to start, Richard.
Now?
All right.
Start it now.
Yeah. Love you, Matt.
Love you, Kyle. Thanks for
Love you,
joining us,
Richard.
Richard.
Cheers, all the best, guys.
Have a good one.
All up in the lens, Kyle and Matt snapping, capturing all them trends. Peeping through the scope, freeze frame the fly. Angry Bird Pod Show, aiming for the sky. Oh, they click in the snap, see the birds on the map. Angry Bird Pod Flow, flipping through the recap. Kyle and Matt, dropping wings on blast. Tune in next week, this one never in the past. Eagles, hawks, and kestrels, flying so divine. Peep the live broadcast, podcast goldmine. Twisting in the air, birds of every kind. Critics gonna chirp, but they ain't ever dying. Zooming in on sparrows, robins in the mist. Matt's got the shutter, Kyle's got the twist. Feathered friends in flight, equipped with the strut. Angry Bird Pod Show, capturing the cut. Oh, they click in the snap, see the birds on the map. Angry Bird Pod Flow, flipping through the recap. Kyle and Matt, dropping wings on blast. Tune in next week, this one never in the past. On the twilight, watch the colors flash. Birds of every shade in a photogenic dash. No need for fame, just the birds flying free. Angry Bird Pod Show, bringing all the glee. Oh, they click and they snap, see the birds on the map. Angry Bird Pod Flow, flipping through the recap. Kyle and Matt, dropping wings on blast. Tune in next week, this but never in the past. Eagles, hawks, and kestrels, flying so divine. Keep the live broadcast, podcast goldmine. Twisting in the air, birds of black, so fine. Brain Matt, dropping wings on blast. Tuning in next week, this but never in the past. In the past. Tuning in next week, this but never in the past. In the past. Zooming in on sparrows, robins in the mist. Matt's got the shutter, Kyle's got the twist. Feathered friends in flight, equipped with the strut. Angry Bird Pod Show, capturing the cut. From dawn to twilight, watch the colors flash. Birds of every shade in a photogenic dash. No need for fame, just the birds flying free. Angry Bird Pod Show, bringing all the glee. Oh, they click and they snap, see the birds on the map. Angry Bird Pod Flow, flipping through the recap. Kyle and Matt, dropping wings on blast. Tune in next week, this one never in the past. From the past. Not shortcut. Not shortcut. Angry Bird Pod Show, bringing all the glee. Bringing all the glee.